All right, Nick, let's talk about the Las Vegas Raiders. Obviously, the season has not gone the way the Raiders fans wanted to. They are last in the NFL per their record. But in brighter news, when you're last in the NFL, that means you'll be first in the NFL draft. And to that regard, we have some fantastic news for the Raiders. One player in particular is leaning towards the Raiders, which I think is fantastic news for them. It's going to be great going forward. Before we get into that, I'm Andrew, and this is Saturday Morning Inspection. All right, Nick, as I alluded to, one player in the NFL draft is leaning towards the Las Vegas Raiders as their preferred destination. There's a lot of ways you could take this because obviously you got to be number one to be able to get the player you want. So the Raiders on the right track, but let's get into the article and we can discuss it, dissect it a little bit more on the other side. This, of course, is from USA Today. It says ESPN Giants beat writer, that's interesting, Jordan Raanan, reports that Sanders' camp is leaning towards landing in Las Vegas. Of course, that's quarterback Shedeur Sanders from Colorado. It says there's a long way to go until the draft. A lot can happen, including changes with the Giants coach and front office. Nothing can completely be taken off the table, and staring at a potential 2-14 season in the face. If the Giants GM Joe Schoen were let go, that could change the team's plans depending on his successor. Multiple sources close to Shedeur Sanders and Colorado program also believe his preference would be to land in Las Vegas. So I think that's really interesting. A Giants beat writer coming out saying that he has heard that they are preferring to land in Las Vegas. I don't think they'd say that unless that's a word going around, because obviously the Giants might want him. They're number 2 in the NFL draft. Curious what your thoughts are on this one, Nick. But before we get to you, Raiders fans, in the comment section below, let us know. Let's play some, guessing games here. I think, let's say Raiders finish number 2. Somehow the Giants beat them to the race to the bottom, and they get there first. They get Shedeur Sanders. Who is your backup? Who is the number 2 player in the draft that you think the Raiders should pick up if they aren't able to get Shedeur Sanders, which I personally think they probably will be able to get? Let us know what your thoughts are in the comment section below. But nonetheless, Nick, what do you think about this news on Shedeur Sanders preferring the Raiders?
It's very interesting because if you go back, 20 years ago now, it was Eli Manning who wanted to go to the Giants versus at the time the San Diego, now Los Angeles Chargers, because he felt the Giants historically with the Mara family and all that were the better run franchise, were the better organization. They obviously weren't a better team necessarily than the Chargers going into after the 2004 season. They just felt, the Manning family felt that the Giants were a better organization. Fast forward 20 years, and if you compare the Giants and the Raiders, if you listen to the media or if you just go on what you hear on ESPN or Fox Sports or whatever, you would hear that the Raiders organization is a total dumpster fire. The reality is it's not. And I think this is part of what Mark Davis has been trying to do with the addition of guys like Tom Brady, with what they've done in terms of investments, moving to Las Vegas and things like that. I think this Raiders organization, with Antonio Pierce, of course, the head coach, Telesco as the general manager, they are very well respected right now in the National Football League, and a lot of players want to be a part of it, right? We've seen a lot of big name free agents. We look at Christian Wilkins come to the Las Vegas Raiders. A few years ago, it was Davante Adams ended up being acquired by the Raiders, right? Big name guys want to play for the Raiders, want to go to Las Vegas. They recognize the organizational strength, and don't sleep on that. That's a really important thing. Sometimes the record can be a little misleading just because injuries happen, talent isn't there, or question marks at quarterback, right? You can have a great organization, but if you have injuries and issues at quarterback, it doesn't matter. You're going to lose. It's just the way it is in the National Football League. And I think a lot of people look at the Raiders with Antonio Pierce, with Telesco, with Brady joining the ownership group, with what Mark Davis is doing, being a quiet owner, right? All the criticisms you want to have about Mark Davis, he is a very quiet, on the sidelines guy, letting the football people do football things that tends to work out in the long term. So I would say right now, this is great news for the Raiders in terms of potential players, whether they be guys in the draft, free agents, trade, whatever, want to come to Las Vegas and be a part of this organization. It's a sign of organizational strength. And look, it's also a sign that you have a great quarterback prospect. Whatever you think of Coach Prime, Deion Sanders, and his social media presence, Shedeur Sanders is a phenomenal prospect. I think he'll be a great NFL quarterback. I think he's got a lot of things going well for him. So if no matter how you look at this is a great sign for the Raiders. A top prospect wants to come to them, and it's a great indication of organizational strength. This team is trending in the right direction long term. It may take time. There's a lot of talent of people that has to happen, but I think it's undeniable the Raiders are heading in the right direction here.
Yeah, Nick, I think this is, like you said, a great move for the Raiders. And there's a couple things. Another way to look at it is the Raiders are an organization that in the past couple of years, it it's been rough at the quarterback position. I say couple, I mean the past 2 years in particular, 2024 and 2023. But if you look at the years
I'll
before,
cut you. I'll cut you off there, Miles. I think it's been the past 22 years at the quarterback position for the Raiders. It's been pretty rough.
yeah, the one thing I will say is from 2014 to 2022, they had Derek Carr, and Derek Carr wasn't horrendous, I guess. He was
I'll
just
give you that. I'll
average,
give you that. Yeah, that's
average,
fair.
average level quarterback for the Raiders. But if you go back before that, it's pretty bad because you got the Jamarcus Russells, Terrell Pryors, the Carson Palmer experiment. A lot of really bad before that. So I think that negates anything good that Derek Carr potentially could have done. But my point is, the Raiders, since Derek Carr, since him leaving, they haven't really gone out and tried to get their future at quarterback yet. If you look at the Giants, when Eli Manning left, they immediately went out and tried to get their future at quarterback in a guy like Daniel Jones. Obviously, they had drafted him very highly. They thought it was the future. You saw how they developed Daniel Jones, as in he is no longer the starting quarterback of the Giants. So that didn't really work out. So if I'm Shedeur Sanders and I look at these teams, I see that there's a new front, a new head coaching staff, new wave of guys in Las Vegas, still very exciting. And there's a lot of potential for me to come in there, and you never know. I think it's an open door for a new quarterback to come in and get developed the proper way. What you see in New York is there's been a lot of bad at the quarterback position ever since Eli Manning left, especially development, sticking with guys, then not sticking with guys. It just seems like a debacle over there comparatively to the Raiders. I don't think we've had a full grasp of what this Antonio Pierce organization can do with a good quarterback prospect because they haven't gone out and got one yet. So I think if you look at it that way, it's clear to me that Shedeur Sanders would want to go to Las Vegas over New York. And I think the other question here, if you're talking about Shedeur Sanders, of course, is what market is bigger, and I think they're both equal. I think Las Vegas is a pretty big quarterback market, at least sponsorship, ad-wise for a guy that wants to build his brand. New York's obviously traditionally the biggest, but I think Las Vegas is pretty big as well, and there's a lot of avenues to travel from there. So I think the Raiders, very enticing team for Shedeur Sanders to go to, and I think just if you look at it, they are less bad, or there's not more unknown about what they can do at the quarterback position. Giants have really floundered their last guy in Daniel Jones.
You bring up a great point to end on there. I think that's absolutely critical is that if you look at what the Raiders have done in terms of their front office, in terms of their coaching staff, it's generally been a lot of smart moves in terms of how they developed and how they treated young players. And look, a lot of people talk about their record, but the reality is the Raiders have done a great job with some hidden gems, some diamonds in the rough, putting guys in positions to be successful. Brock Bowers is a super duper star. He's going to be one of the best players in the NFL. They use him in a very smart way. The Giants are the opposite. I think you bring up an absolutely perfect point there. The smart decisions made by the Raiders leadership over the past couple seasons, I think it began with promoting Antonio Pierce, has resonated throughout the rest of the football world. And I think the Raiders will reap big dividends, and it starts with the upcoming draft and free agency because of it.